Another fight night is in the books. Up next, a huge card next Saturday at UFC 309 inside MSG, where Jon Jones returns to the octagon. You can catch the prelim fights on Sportsnet 360 or Sportsnet Plus at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, and you can purchase and stream the main card on Sportsnet Plus at an additional cost. No subscription required. Visit sportsnetplus.ca/UFC for all the details. And to help us break down tonight's card and look ahead to that UFC 309, we are so pleased to be joined by Canadian bantamweight Aiemann Zahabi, the newly ranked Aiemann Zahabi, might I add, number 14 in the bantamweight division. That has a pretty nice ring to it. Aiemann, how's it feeling? Congrats.
Thank you so much, Danielle. It feels amazing to be ranked. You know, I was hoping that with a really good performance against Pedro, I would slide in. And the 12 journalists on the panel really did me a nice solid, and they got me in there.
It was a really cool experience, it seemed, in Edmonton. So we're going to get back to that in just a little bit. But how about that main event that we just saw? Prates, Magny. Magny's long been considered the gatekeeper of the welterweight division. So were you surprised with how it played out? Because it felt like Prates is the real deal.
Yeah, Prates and all the guys at the Fight Nerds, they seem to be carrying a lot of power in their hands. And it was really crazy, the KO, because it almost looked like he missed or he barely touched Neil Magny on the top of the head, but he was able to generate enough power in that punch to put him out, that was surprising. Like, I thought maybe he could get the finish, but I didn't think it would be one clean shot like that.
They just seemed to clip him, you're right. He said after his #1 hobby is partying, so he's got a fan in me forever. Seems like a fun guy in the glasses. That seems to be going somewhere. They like that.
Yeah, he's a very charismatic guy. He's fought 4 times in 1 year. He's got 4 KOs in 1 year. I think there's a lot of high hopes for him to move up in the division. He says he's got a daughter in Australia and he would love to go visit her. So maybe Uncle Dana is going to take care of him and make sure he gets that flight to Australia.
Well, that's nice. A lot of hype also around the Dutch Knight, Reinier de Ridder. He was in tough against veteran Gerald Meerschaert. He pulled off the submission victory, but how impressed were you with his performance?
Honestly, I thought it was a little bit lackluster, and I know he's a 3-division champion at another organization, but it just goes to show that the UFC is one notch above a lot of different promotions. And honestly, I think I'm happy he got, he did a good job. He won the fight, but the striking, he seemed a little slow. He didn't take the punches too well. I'm not trying to be overly critical, but I think, he's got some stuff he's got to work on before really popping off in the UFC.
So riding a wave of Canadian momentum from Edmonton last week, Jillian Robertson, who was in action earlier against the Brazilian Pinheiro, despite a dominant victory, Aiemann, she said after she was disappointed, she's not here for decision, she's here to finish fights. Do you think she's been a little bit too hard on herself, considering?
I feel like it's very normal for fighters to self-criticize very harshly. I can relate to her. I think she did pretty good overall, but she's getting used to finishing girls quite quickly. I think the criticism I would have for her is that in round 1, when she did get on top and when she had those moments of control, she didn't land enough ground and pound to soften her up to be able to finish her later on. But then by the end of the 3rd round, you saw that she really poured on the ground and pound and she made those adjustments. I think she's a veteran. I think she's great for women's MMA. I think she's great for the Team Canada. And I have high hopes for her that she can make all these adjustments with Dean Thomas and the guys at the Goat Shed. I think she has a promising future.
Easy to be excited about any Canadian fighters. Also very easy to be excited, Aiemann, about next week. Heavyweight title is on the line at Madison Square Gardens. The return of the GOAT, Jon Jones against Stipe Miocic. So we haven't seen Jones in action for over a year. What are you expecting in this one? Because we did see him in Vegas watching along.
Yeah, listen, I'm super excited about this fight. I know people are always going to doubt Miocic because of his age and his time off and things like that. But he's also a really good wrestler who has KO power. And he hurt DC, and he was able to wrestle with DC quite comparably. And I know Jon Jones is probably one of the best wrestlers in MMA. The way he takes guys down, the way he dominates them on the ground. And he's also a phenomenal and very artistic striker. He always does things that are kind of outside the box. So I'm really looking forward to these. Are going to be the 2 greatest heavyweights of all time, in my opinion, fighting next week in Madison Square Garden. And, I've trained with Jon Jones in the past, and I've seen him in the room. He's one of the strongest guys I've ever seen throw people around. So I'm really excited. My heart is with Miocic, but my mind is with Jon Jones.
Oh, that's a tough split, Aiemann. Okay, well, that sells it for me. I like that. Someone else who's very strong and also a GOAT, GSP, who had some pretty nice words for you on social media last week after your win. He likes your jab. How influential has he been on your career?
Huge influence, incredible role model and mentor. You know, I try to like mimic my career after his career in terms of how I prepare for fights, how I live my life inside the training and outside the training. And I'm not gonna lie, besides saying my takedowns are great, I'm really happy to get the compliment of that he thinks my jab is nice because you know it's the king of the jab.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that one day I'm gonna fight an opponent that I need to take down, and then he'll be impressed with my takedowns as well.
Perfect. Just keep chalking them off and impressing GSP, right?
Yeah, of course. You know, listen, this is the guy I've always looked up to, and I appreciate him calling because I'd asked him to come corner me for the fight, but his show La Cage was coming out on Netflix this same weekend as I was going to be fighting, so he had to go promote the show and things like that, so he couldn't make it. But he was nice enough to remember that I was fighting on that day. He called me while I was in the locker room, and then called me after when I won. So hats off for him for being such a gentleman.
Yeah, that's great supportive stuff. All right, and let's get down to brass tacks here. What's taken Drake so long to get you a Rolex? I feel like you've asked him very nicely a couple times.
I asked him after I won my fight against Eric Lang, and then I got to meet him in January when he was at the UFC Toronto. I went to go see him in his booth because his head of security is one of my longtime students. So he brought me in to meet Drake, and I'm like, hey, Drake, you didn't send me the watch yet. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, listen, you got to send it to me in the mail. If you're on a waiting list, I totally understand, but send me the watch, bro. He's like, you think I'm on a waiting list? You know how much money I'm worth? I'm like, then send me the watch, baby. Send it to me.
Get it over here already. Well, honestly, you keep up what you're doing, Eamon. You can buy Drake a Rolex, okay?
That's the plan.
That's the plan. All right, I appreciate your insights so much. Best of luck going forward to you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show.